Every night we ask you to guess the elbow of the day. Well, Victor Rocco wrote in on Twitter today, oh, please let it be Joe Lieberman. Victor, you've got your wish. It is Joe Lieberman. He's leaving the Senate, of course, at the end of this term, and he gave his farewell speech today. Look at the pathetic level of disinterest in the Senate. Look at the first shot as you watch his speech here, and then watch how there's almost no one there.
Today, I regret to say, as I leave the Senate, that the greatest obstacle that I see standing between us and the brighter American future we all want is right here in Washington. We need bipartisan leadership to break the gridlock in Washington that will unleash all the potential that is in the American people.
So he continued to bore us with this nonsense about how he's bipartisan when, of course, he's massively Republican in his policies. And by the way, 3 or 4 senators came in and out during the speech. Look at this again. Okay, this is the chamber as he's speaking. I think I can hear crickets. Loser. Loser. Wow, what an esteemed senator. Throw him in the ring. He had this coming for a long time. Joe, don't watch out. Oh, there you go. I didn't even want you to see it coming. All right, Joe Lieberman, loser of the day. Young Turks, we'll see you tomorrow.
Good evening, I'm Elliot Spitzer, and this is Viewpoint. The president caved after months of Republican attacks led by Senators John McCain, Lindsey Graham, and Kelly Ayotte on UN Ambassador Susan Rice, focusing on her scripted television appearances following the Benghazi tragedy. Today, Ambassador Rice withdrew her name from consideration to be nominated for Secretary of State. In an interview with NBC's Brian Williams, Rice pointed to the distraction these Republican attacks have caused.
Today, I made the decision that it was the best thing for our country, for the American people, that I not continue to be considered by the president for nomination as Secretary of State, because I didn't want to see a confirmation process that was very prolonged, very politicized, very distracting, and very disruptive, because there are so many things we need to get done as a country, and the first several months of a second-term president's agenda is really the opportunity to get the crucial things done. We're talking about comprehensive immigration reform, balanced deficit reduction, job creation. That's what matters. And to the extent that my nomination could have delayed or distracted or deflected or made even some of these priorities impossible to achieve, I didn't want that, and I'd much prefer to continue doing what I'm doing, which is a job I love at the United Nations.
President Obama released a statement expressing his dismay, saying in part, and I quote, "While I deeply regret the unfair and misleading attacks on Susan Rice in recent weeks, her decision demonstrates the strength of her character and an admirable commitment to rise above the politics of the moment to put our national interests first. The American people can be proud to have a public servant of her caliber and character representing our country." Joining me now is Steve Clemens, editor-at-large of The Atlantic and founder and senior fellow of the New America Foundation's American Strategy Program, and Joe Cirincione, president of Plowshares Fund and a member of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's International Security Advisory Board. Thank you both for joining us tonight.
Sure, Elliot. Thanks for having us on.
Steve, let me start with you. After the way the president had reinforced Susan Rice in the past weeks, not only saying an attack on her is an attack on me at a press conference, the scripted applause and his statements about her at a cabinet meeting just recently, this seems like such a sharp U-turn. As you heard me say a few moments ago, it seems to me as though the president caved. Am I wrong about that? What do you understand to be going on here?
Well, I think it was. I mean, I think that Susan described it accurately in the sense that she's, stood down. She's a very capable and competent woman who would have, I think, done a great job as Secretary of State. That said, it is a distraction, and it's been a distraction. When Jonathan Karl asked the president what he thought of John McCain and Lindsey Graham's comments, I actually happened to be hosting the meeting that happened at. It started a spark, and you had a number of senators, John Barrasso was one, Susan Collins, others who've come out and expressing concern. And I think two things are going on. There was, ill feelings as the result of the election, combined with ill feelings about things that Susan Rice may have said about John McCain in the past, combined with Benghazi, and they felt that they were able to make the president pay a price, somewhat of a small price in their eyes, but still a price, and they were tenacious. And the president, and I think you're absolutely right, I think he finally caved because this would be a painful thing to have Benghazi play out day after day after day while he's trying to deal with fiscal cliff issues.
Steve, I think that's exactly right. Those factors all converged. But, Joe, it seems to me the president miscalculated here because they saw that those factors were adding fuel to the flames, and the senators who were arguing their case, the Republican senators, believed very deeply that they did not want Susan Rice. But the president escalated this fight in the past number of weeks with his affirmative statements about Susan Rice, with the cabinet meeting. And so then for him to have escalated this and then suddenly pull back at the height of his perceived political capital, having just won, that's what I don't understand is a strategic matter.
Well, clearly the president feels very strongly about Susan Rice and is a believer in her capabilities, and why not? I mean, she's a brilliant Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Stanford University, a Rhodes Scholar, a doctorate in international relations. She's been with the Obama team from the beginning. I was pleased to serve with Susan Rice on the national security team in the first Obama campaign. She ran a terrific campaign effort there. She hasn't made any mistakes as UN ambassador. She has an outstanding record. The president believed in her, wanted to reward her, doubled down. He thought he could beat McCain and Graham with this travesty of an opposition. In the end, it's clear, as I don't think this was Susan's decision alone. The calculation was that this was going to be a very costly victory. I believe if the president had pushed it in the end, he would have won, but it would have been, as the ambassador described, a great distraction. There are other more important issues to pursue. She goes out the way she's always been, a real class act.
And a fighter. Look, I think there's no question. Some of the critique of her, which is that she's tenacious, which is another way of saying a little hard-edged sometimes. She speaks her mind. That's another way of saying sometimes she can be a little edgy. All of these things can be stated in many different ways. She isn't perhaps always the most smooth-edged person to deal with. But, Steve, let me ask you this. Did she, to come back to Benghazi, which is the spark that lit the fuse, is there any evidence that you've seen that she did anything wrong, anything other than read the script she was given in that context? In other words, the facts do support her claim that, hey, guys, I was told what to say.
Not at all. I mean, I think this was a completely fabricated attack on Susan Rice. You know, when you think about it, I am try to be supportive of the Obama administration when I can, but I have to say that they're constantly behind when it comes to communications, because if you remember the Iraq invasion and all the lies and deceits about the WMD issues that were there and what was said, it was flabbergasting to me that the White House didn't return the favor somewhat and put the onus back on the deceit and duplicity that we've often heard in national security issues from the Bush-Cheney administration. They didn't do that, and so they sat. Susan became a tremendous victim. You also had David Petraeus, who in my mind was much more highly complicit in the decisions and in the actual on-the-ground realities of what the CIA issues were there on the ground. And I think that the White House let that play out and left Susan out to hang. And I think that is not often talked about. We don't talk about the difference between how the White House positioned her and used her. But it was really unfortunate because she had no blame whatsoever in this.
Let's be clear about that. She didn't do anything wrong. There is nothing here whatsoever that should disqualify her from being Secretary of State. The president should be able to have the people he wants in his cabinet, and he was denied that here by a political campaign, and it was clear that the senators were not going to let up. But I don't think we've heard the last of Susan Rice. She's meeting with the president tomorrow.
That's right.
This woman is simply too good to have her career stop here. I wouldn't be surprised if the president has something else in mind for her. And he's got, in some ways, he has to do this. He has to appoint her to another senior position. He can't appear to have caved or lost completely in this battle.
Well, that's my question. Joe, does she stay at the UN, perhaps? Or does she now want to move on? And also, who is the winner now? Everybody's presuming, and presumptions often are false, that John Kerry fills this void. Is that a rash assumption on everybody's part? Joe, what do you think?
It's not a rash assumption. I mean, it was clearly a choice. Those are the top two contenders, and Senator Kerry is terrifically qualified for this position. You know, the president, in some ways, is in a fortuitous position. It's like dealing with the lineup for the Washington Nationals. You've got a string of great players. You're just trying to figure out the right batting order. Kerry could be Secretary of State. Chuck Hagel could become Secretary of Defense. You could see Jack Lew, the current Chief of Staff, move over to the Secretary of Treasury, and then Tom Donilon, the current National Security Advisor, move over to be Chief of Staff, and then there's the natural opening for Susan Rice. She becomes National Security Advisor, close to the president, back in the Washington mix, and in a position to still help the president execute his policies.
Joe, I was with you on everything you said, except that baseball metaphor. We up here in New York often forget you even have a baseball team in Washington. It's a momentary, transitory moment that you have a team that can actually play above 500. Steve, let me come back to you for a second. Did John McCain know about this before it was announced publicly? Did the White House call him in terms of the way Washington works? Did they call him and say, okay, John, you win this one, but we want something back. We're going to give this to you. Be gracious, but here's what we expect in terms of A, B, or C. What do you think?
I have no idea what the case was, but I doubt it. I think there was a lot of anger and frustration. I happened to be with John McCain up with Senator Udall, Mark Udall, and Barbara Mikulski and John Barrasso at an event after they did their mugging of Susan Rice. And John was knew he had hit a at least a double, if not a triple, in going after her and basically put the White House back on its heels in the way the president responded to their comments. And I think that this episode has given John McCain a win, and I don't think the White House is going to say, okay, we're going to give you what you want now. You have to play nice with us on other things. I don't think that's the way this game is played. This was a pretty vicious game, and I think there are resentments that will continue for some time.
That's exactly right. And, although they might be feeling like winners tonight in some ways, I would not want to be Senator McCain or Senator Graham. There is more to this story. These resentments are not going to go away. These people are going to pay for this in the long run.
Okay, let me throw it. We only have a few seconds left. To turn the tables on the Susan Rice story for the moment, is it possible that what underlies this is the possibility that she knew something about the way her talking points had been edited, and that is why she's taking her name out of it? Any of you think that's possible? I just want to close the door on it.
I don't believe it is an issue at all. I don't think that the factual nature of what she articulated with Benghazi had anything to do with this. This was pure rough and raw gladiatorial politics that was divorced from reality. They took down someone. Now the president is going to put forward Hagel. When you think about it, they're going to have Hagel, probably Hagel, John Kerry at State, Joe Biden as vice president, Barack Obama as president, four great pals from the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. It's going to be interesting.
Well, it's also the Senate is taking over the White House. I mean, this really is the Senate. Yeah, they all want to live there anyway, so they're actually getting in there through their subsidiary positions, diminishes incredibly important positions. But this is almost what's happening. Joe, last word to you. You agree that there's absolutely no blemish on Susan's record here in terms of what happened on those talking points?
There's certainly no blemish on Susan's record. Whether there was some funny business with the talking points, we just don't know. Right. But it's clear that there is no Benghazi story to continue here. We're going to see this thing put to bed. We're going to get on with the serious national security business of this country.
As well we should. All right. Editor-at-large of The Atlantic, Steve Clemens, and President of Plowshares Fund, Joe Cirincione, thank you both for your insights and wisdom tonight.
Thank you, Elliot.
Thank you, Elliot.